All right, so being a dad, probably one of the best things that happened in my life. As a kid, looking at my dad and just watching him, and it's like, wow, my dad, he really worked hard, and I admire him more for that. So I want to say Happy Father's Day to my dad as well. And I know that one day he's gonna be a dad and he's gonna have this same moment as well. And I love this boy, and growing up in church is my goal for him. And I know he loves Jesus. We love Jesus, and I thank God for my boy.
So my dad played a big role in my life. He taught me how to be a dad, and he taught me what it was like to be a leader, to be a follower of Jesus. My dad was Superman in my mind. We unfortunately lost my dad in 2019 to dementia.
Did you watch your dad?
Yes. Where's Pappy at right now?
In heaven.
In heaven. Being a dad means living up to the legacy that he left behind for me to carry on. If I can be half the man that he was to these girls, I think I'm doing all right.
When I think about what it means to be a dad, I think about my own dad and the sacrifices that he made, and I think about all the baseball games that he made it to, and all the guitars he helped me horse trade. And when I think about being a dad, I think about taking this one in the backyard and teaching him how to defend himself, and being sore the next 5 days because I let him knock me over in the backyard so many times, and then teaching this one how to swim. Also making sure whatever they're interested in, I try to give them an opportunity to learn at it and to invest in them and the things that they feel passionate about. And then teaching them the way they should go, making sure that we pray together every day. We talk about the fruits of the Spirit. We talk about the commandments. We want them to know Jesus and to be little disciples. So how's that sound to you?
We go to a pool today.
Okay, we're going to a pool today. What about you? How's that sound?
Good.
Good. Okay.
All right. Good morning, church, and happy Father's Day to all you dads. Granddads, great-granddads, stepdads, spiritual dads, father figures, whoever you are. Thank you for the difference that you make in the next generation, and we love you and are so grateful for you. I thought I'd begin with just some things dads are famous for this morning. So I don't know what your dad's famous for, but my dad is famous for this, and many dads are. Dads are famous for falling asleep in the recliner and insisting they were just resting their eyes, right? Dads are also famous for refusing to ask for directions because they know where they're going, even though we all know they don't. My dad was so famous for this, are famous for saying they know a shortcut only to make the trip 12 minutes longer or even longer than that. And then one of the things that I'm famous for as a dad that I'll say to my kids or to my wife, and maybe you say this too, is I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I love to say, hey, I'll take care of that later, or I'll fix it soon, or I'll organize that this weekend. I'll get to it. And sometimes, honestly, I get to it. Sometimes I do not get to it. Now, this sort of mentality is not really that big of a deal if you're talking about hanging up a shelf or organizing a closet or replacing a faucet. I'll get to it. It's not that big of a deal. But when we say, I'll get to it, in our response to God, well, that's when things become a problem. Because none of us should ever say something like this: I'll get serious about my faith later. I'll deal with that sin later. I'll get in a small group later. I'll start serving later. I'll get baptized later. I'll make Jesus central later. I'll get to those things when I get to those things. And yet, even though we shouldn't say things like that, a lot of us know exactly how it feels to say those kinds of things because we've either said those things in the past or we are currently saying some of those exact things. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this is exactly what a group of people were saying to God some 2,500 years ago now, which is why God sent a prophet you probably never heard of, a prophet named Haggai, to give them a direct message from him. Now, I said this the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to say it probably every single week that I'm up here, is what God said way back then, way back when, even 2,500 years ago, still matters now. Yes, this message we're about to look at is ancient, but no, it is not outdated. It is absolutely relevant to our lives, and you'll see how. Now, before I jump into the message, I do need to give you a little context, again, because a lot of you don't even know who Haggai is, but Because of years of disobedience and turning away from God and ignoring, really, we looked at Jeremiah's message last week, ignoring the prophet Jeremiah, God's people ended up spending 70 years in Babylonian captivity. Really just living in a country that wasn't theirs, not where they wanted to be, but they ended up there for 70 years. Jerusalem was destroyed, including the temple, the place God was worshiped. But after 70 years, some of the people of Jerusalem begin to make their way back. Some of Israel begins to make its way back to this once promised land. And when they finally make it back, there's so much excitement, so much anticipation that they begin to build the temple right away. This place where the sacrifices were made, where God's people came to be made right with him, where the Lord was worshiped in all his glory. They begin to make their way back to this place and to begin to rebuild this temple that was once so special. However, even though they started, eventually things slow down, life gets in the way, opposition comes, distractions come, discouragement comes, and ultimately the work stops. And not just for a few weeks, not just for a few months, not even just for a few years. 16 years go by, and all they have to show for the temple is the foundation that they started. And ultimately, they just get used to not having a temple at all. And it's into this context that the prophet Haggai shows up and delivers a direct message from the Lord to his people. But before we look at the direct message, we have some context. This is what the author tells us. He says, in the second year of King Darius, on the first day of the 6th month, the word of the Lord came through the prophet Haggai to Zerubbabel, son of that guy, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, son of that guy, the high priest. So he's just telling us, hey, this is the context. Haggai ministered to a group of people at a real point in history. These are the real names associated with that time in history. This is 70 years after Babylonian captivity. They make their way back. And then we see the message, or at least the beginning of the message. This is what the Lord Almighty says. These people say, the time has not yet come to rebuild the Lord's house. Now, I don't know what you notice about this message, but the first thing I notice is that the Lord doesn't refer to these people as my people. He says, what does he say? He says, these people. These people, okay, not my people, even though they are his people. These people are saying to themselves, the time has not yet come to rebuild the Lord's house. Now, if you're like, Matt, nobody says this anymore. We say this all the time, don't we? We say things like this. If you're a parent, you're never going to believe what your daughter said to me today. You've said that before, haven't you? Or your son got another note from his teacher. Or, you really need to talk to your child. We're sort of, in a joking way, distancing ourselves from our offspring, right? Distancing ourselves from our children. And of course, when we use this language, we're doing so jokingly, but the Lord is not joking when he distances himself from the people. He said, these people, these hard-headed people, these people that I've rescued again and again and again, these people say, and what do they say? He said, these people say, the time has not yet come to rebuild the Lord's house. What are they saying? We'll get to it when we get to it. The time has not yet come to rebuild the Lord's house. Now, at first glance, this accusation isn't as bad as other accusations prophets have made. I mean, this is not, that they're not saying, that they don't believe in God, which would be awful, obviously. They're not saying they're walking away from their faith. They're not saying that they don't care about the Lord's house. They're not saying any of those kinds of things. They're just saying, it's not a good time. It's not time yet. We'll get to it when we get to it. In other words, they're not, and we do this sort of thing all the time too, they're not opposing God's will. They're just postponing God's will. They're not saying no to God. I mean, because who does that? They're just saying, not yet. We'll get to that obedience at some point. They're saying what we all say again to our wives, to our children. We'll get to it tomorrow, eventually, later, at some point when we have some extra time. But in their case, days became months, weeks became months became years, and again, all they have to show is a foundation. Not yet eventually becomes not ever. Now, I'm sure if we could hear their side of the story, if we could hear what they were thinking, they'd have more than a few excuses ready to share with us. They'd probably say the same sort of thing when we don't get around to doing what God asks us to do, challenges us to do. They'd probably say something like, I've got a lot going on at work. You understand? I got a lot going on at work. Or, the economy hasn't really been the best. Or maybe they were saying, the reason we're not getting to the Lord's temple just yet because, my family needs more of me in this season. Like I just need to be more available. And by the way, these aren't awful excuses, right? I'll say it this way, these aren't ridiculous excuses. These are sort of what we might call reasonable excuses, rational excuses that make sense. And yet at the same time, they're still excuses, aren't they? They're still excuses that you don't really ever have a good opportunity to say, not yet, Lord. Now, the thing is, let's be real. The issue wasn't that they didn't have, if I can say it this way, wasn't that they didn't have time. That's not the real issue. They had time. They could have, and in fact, as we read, you'll see they had plenty of time. The issue isn't that they didn't have time. The issue was what they had chosen to do with their time. And this is where God begins to press in a little bit and begin to say, hey, you've had time for this thing, so why haven't you had time to rebuild my house? Here's how he challenges them. Then the word of the Lord came through the prophet Haggai. Is it a time for you yourselves, people, to be living in your paneled houses while this house, my house, remains a ruin? He's saying, the Lord's saying, really, guys? So let me get this straight. You haven't built my house. You don't have time for it, whatever your excuses are. You have time to build your own houses, though. You just don't have time to build mine. You have time to make sure that you have a place you can live in, but you don't have time to make sure that I have a place where I can be worshiped, where people can come to worship me. And again, this is where God presses in a little deeper. Is it a time for you yourselves to be living in your paneled houses while this house remains a ruin? And again, he's just like, when he says they're living in paneled houses, let's think this way, modern terms. Granite countertops, okay, shiplap walls, state-of-the-art kitchen. These aren't average houses. God's saying, look, you have time to build these really fancy houses, these paneled houses, but you don't have time to repair mine. And again, the issue isn't that they have houses. That's not the issue. The issue is that their houses are thriving while God's house is neglected. The issue isn't that they love their houses. God's happy for them. I'm glad you have a house. I'm glad you have a place to live. I'm glad you have a place to settle down in the promised land once again. The issue is that they love their houses more than they love God's house, more than they love the Lord. And that leads really the Lord to say these next words through Haggai. Now, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. He says, guys, I want all of you to start doing something you haven't been doing clearly. I want you to give careful thought to your ways. Now, if I'm the Lord, and there's a reason that I'm not, obviously, I would not be so gracious in this moment. I would not be so, hey, give careful thought to your ways. I would be like, have you guys lost your minds? You're building your houses. You're not building mine. I mean, what are you thinking? Why do you think you're more important than I am? But again, that's not what God says. God says, give careful thought to your ways. Think about what you're doing. Think about how you're living. Think about the decisions that you're making. Give careful thought to your ways. To say it another way, think carefully about what you've prioritized and carefully about what you haven't. I want you to think carefully, people, about what's most important to you, and as a result, what's really not that important at all to you. Now, the reason he wants them to give careful thought to their ways is about the temple. But the temple, just so you know, isn't really the real problem. The temple is the revealing problem. The temple is what shows where their hearts are at. Now, in other words, this unfinished temple revealed that ultimately they were okay with sort of putting God to the side for a season, if not a lifetime. For them to say, hey, we started a foundation, okay, we'll get to that later, it revealed where their hearts really were. Their hearts were not focused on the Lord, at least not entirely focused on the Lord. That they were okay with prioritizing themselves and their houses and their comfort and just sort of, again, setting the Lord to the side for a season. And then the Lord begins to explain why they're having some of the problems that they're having. He says, you have planted much but harvested little. You guys know this. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages, only to put them in a purse with holes in it. Now, I think most of us probably have some sense of what the Lord's saying here, but let me say it in a more modern way just to make sure you're tracking. But here's what he's saying. You buy groceries, but the pantry is empty as soon as you restock it. I know some of us feel that way sometimes because we have, teenagers living in our house, but he's saying, that's how you feel. You work overtime, but are still behind on your mortgage. You fill up the truck, but the gas light comes right back on. That's what he's saying. You're wondering, where's my money going? Why are things not lasting and bringing what I thought they would bring? And again, I'm sure as soon as these words come out of Haggai's mouth, the people are nodding in agreement. Yes, that's exactly how we feel. How did you know? That's exactly what it feels like. What we have isn't enough. It isn't lasting. It isn't providing the way we thought it would provide. It isn't stretched or going as far as we thought it would go. And while they thought they had an income problem or a resource problem, the Lord wants them to understand, no, you have a worship problem. In fact, he says, you don't have a resource problem. Yes, you have a resource problem, but ultimately you have a worship problem. I'm not central to you. You've put me on the back burner. You've set me to the side. And then Haggai says something he's already said. He comes back to it. And he comes back to it because the Lord is the one, again, speaking this message through him. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. Now, obviously, when the Lord says something, you should listen up and you should pay close attention. But if he says something twice, that's probably an indicator this is important. I don't want you to miss this. Don't skip over this. I really want you to be dialed in. He repeats himself because I want you to pay close attention. I want you to take an honest look at your life and ask yourself, why is all of this happening? He wants them to think these questions, in other words, and he sort of just addressed this. He says, why do you think that you have planted much but harvested little? Give careful thought to your ways. Why do you really think you've planted much but harvest little? Give careful thought. Why do you think you eat and never have enough and drink but never have your fill? What's your theory on that? What do you think the reason for that is? Give careful thought to that. Or why do you think you earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it? What do you think the reason is for that, guys? Give careful thought. Ask yourself the hard, probing questions. And then as they're continuing to give careful thought to their ways, God tells them next what they need to do, what they need to get busy doing. He says, here's what I want you to do. Go up into the mountains and bring down timber and build my house already, so that I may take pleasure in it and be honored, says the Lord. So three verbs, right? Three things I want you to do. I want you to go. You leave your paneled houses. Go. I want you to go to the mountains, and I want you to bring some timber down. All the timber you need is up there to repair my house, to make my house glorious again. It's all there. You need to go. You need to bring it. And then once you bring it down, don't think, okay, I'll get to it. No. You need to build. You need to actually start working on my house, making my house happen. Go, bring, and build. Go, bring, and build. And then he says, if you look at it, in other words, they didn't need more information. They didn't need more information. They had all the information. They knew what they were supposed to do. It was already clear to them. They needed more obedience, right? They didn't need more information. The facts were clear. Go, bring, build. They needed to actually now obey the Lord, do what the Lord asked. And then notice, we'll go back to the verse, why they need to do this. It's so that, the Lord says, so that I may take pleasure in it and be honored. God's like, hey, I want to be at the center of your lives again. This is not so I can have a place to live my current place, it's cramped. The AC's out. No. It's just so you prioritize me again the way I need to be prioritized. That I am front and center of your lives again. In fact, Haggai is basically telling them the reason you've had all the problems you've had is because the Lord hasn't been front and center. And that's what he says next. He says, you expected much as you did all that you're doing in the community and harvesting and all the things. You expected much, but see, it turned out to be little. So again, it's like putting money in a purse with holes in it. What you brought home, the Lord says, I blew away. Why? Why would I do this? Declares the Lord. Because of my house, again, back to the temple, which remains a ruin, while each of you is busy with your own house. There's so much being said here, but the phrase that I think stands out to me most is, what you brought home, I blew away. In other words, the reason things aren't going as smoothly as you'd like, as well as you'd imagine, the reason your efforts aren't producing what you thought your efforts were producing is because I'm making sure that your efforts don't produce what you want them to produce. You keep reaching for more, searching for more, striving for more, but I've decided, no. I'm not gonna bless you. I'm not gonna give you what you want, what you feel like is yours. And then the Lord asks the question, why? And he's not asking why because he doesn't know. He knows why. He wants them to understand. Why do you think I'm doing this? What's the reason that I brought all of this upon you? The reason is he's chosen to do it. He wants them to stop blaming the economy, stop blaming their circumstances, stop blaming whatever else they want to blame, and realize because of my house, which remains a ruin while each of you, this is the reason. You brought this on yourself. You know that you should have built my house by now, that the temple should be repaired and restored, and yet you've done nothing. So again, the issue, and I said this earlier, but the issue isn't that they have houses. God's not mad at them for building houses to live in. No. The issue is that their houses are thriving and have been thriving for some time, while God's house, the temple, is neglected. They had energy for their own houses. They had an urgency related to their own houses. They had resources to spend on their own houses, but not for his. And that's what God is exposing in this moment. He's saying, you've put yourself first. And you've put yourself on the throne of your life when I should be on the throne. Therefore, he continues, therefore, in light of all that I've just said, because of you and your disobedience, you're saying not yet. The heavens have withheld their dew and the earth its crops. I called for a drought on the fields and the mountains, on the grain, the new wine, the olive oil, and everything else the ground produces, on people and livestock, and on all the labor of your hands. God now spells out in no uncertain terms. The reason there's a drought in Israel isn't random. God's like, I did that because of your disobedience, because of your managed priorities. Now, that doesn't mean, just so to be clear, that doesn't mean every hardship that we experience in life comes directly from God, that God is like, hey, you did this or you did that, and boom, there's all these hardships. That's not what he's saying. But in this specific situation, God is absolutely using these difficulties to get their attention. And notice how they respond, because this is not the normal response. If you've read through the prophets, this is not the normal response of people to prophets. But I love how their response. Then Zerubbabel, son of that guy, Joshua, son of that guy, the high priest, and the whole remnant of the people obeyed the voice of the Lord their God and the message of the prophet Haggai, because the Lord their God had sent him, and the people feared the Lord. I love this. After Haggai's direct message and said, hey, look, you're the reason for the problems that you're experiencing. You've neglected the Lord's house. You've brought this upon yourself. It's all your fault. I love their response, because how did they respond? It says that they obeyed the voice of the Lord, which means what did they do? They go, bring, build. They went, they brought, they built. And not only did they obey, what else did they do? I love this too. They feared the Lord. In other words, they revered him. They respected him. They put him back in the center of their lives. They realized who it was that was asking them to do this. And they made him the priority of their lives once again. In other words, they recognize who God is, what he deserves, their worship, their respect, their devotion. And then Haggai ends this particular message with an encouragement. After they've obeyed and after they've feared, notice how it ends. Then Haggai, the Lord's messenger, gave this message of the Lord to the people. I am with you, declares the Lord. Now, before we talk about what he does say, this phrase, I am with you, let's talk about what he doesn't say, because God doesn't say, and this is what I would have said, but God doesn't say, finally, God doesn't say, it's about time, or it took you long enough. Those are the things we would have said if we were in God's shoes. Instead, he says, and I love this, I am with you. I am with you. Again, after years of neglecting his house, after years of saying not yet, after years of saying I'll get to it, they finally obey. And the Lord doesn't say, well, it's about time. He says, look, I am with you. And I will be with you. Now, we're going to stop right there, but just let me quickly tell you the rest of the story, because the people, again, stop saying not yet. They do go, bring, build. And in about 4 years' time, the temple is restored and the people are worshiping once again, with the Jerusalem, with the temple being the center of all that's happening there in that city. Now, you might be asking, and this is a great question to ask anytime we read scripture, but what does all of this, Matt, have to do with all of us? I mean, how are we supposed to bring this ancient story to forward to our modern contemporary lives? I mean, how does this apply? And there are lots of ways. We're going to make multiple applications, but I want to make a broad one first, and then I want to make a several smaller, more specific applications first, or after that. So the broad application is this: all of us need to give careful thought to our ways, right? All of us need to do a better job of regularly giving careful thought to our ways. And what I mean is, all of us need to ask from time to time, pause, stop, take a moment and say, where's my energy going? What am I putting the most energy into? Where is my attention going? Who am I giving the most attention to? Where is my money going? Where is my affection going? All of us need to, from time to time, throughout our lives, in fact, all throughout our day, every day even, give careful thought to our ways. And all of us need to ask ourselves, is God getting my best, or is he just getting my leftovers? Is God getting everything that I have and he's first and foremost, or am I saying to God, I'll get to you when I get to you? Not yet, eventually, later. And that leads me to some more specific applications. Some of us, let's be honest this morning, some of us need to stop saying not yet. Some of us need to stop saying not yet. Some of us have been saying not yet for so long that we've convinced ourselves that one day we will actually get to it. And it's been weeks, months, years, maybe 16 years of saying not yet. And you're not any closer. And not yet, just like it had for the people of Haggai's day, not yet has become not ever for you. Every time the Lord brings it up in a message, in a song, in a conversation, you push back, you push away. You say, not yet, it's not time. Every time the Spirit just convicts, we say, I'll deal with that later. Yeah, I know I need to, and I'll get to it when I get to it. And I don't know specifically what you're saying not yet to. It could be any number of things. I'm just going to give you 8 possibilities, but there are so many more possibilities in this. But maybe you're saying not yet to baptism. God's saying, you've made a decision to follow me, and you haven't followed through on that next step, which is baptism, publicly identifying yourself with me. Stop saying not yet. Maybe it's not yet to serving. Some of you have said, I'll get to it when I get to it. When it's another season, when life's less complicated, when I have less going on, I'll get to that. No. Stop saying not yet to serving. Maybe it's not yet to joining a group. I know I need community, Matt. I know I need other people who I can do life with, who can kind of hold me accountable and we can care for each other. I know I need that, but it's not a good time. Not yet. Maybe it's not yet to generosity. Maybe it's not yet to confessing sin. Like you're just like, I can't give this up just yet. I'm just going to, not yet, a little longer. Maybe it's not yet to forgiving someone. You're holding a grudge. There's just anger and resentment and bitterness that you've refused to deal with. Maybe it's not yet to sharing your faith. There's somebody that God has strategically placed in your life to share your story. And they're the perfect person to hear it. And you're saying, not yet. Maybe it's not yet to getting help. Maybe you need recovery. Maybe there's an addiction. Maybe there's a struggle that you need to have I don't know what it is that you're saying not yet to, but I guarantee you're saying not yet to something. And if you are saying not yet, stop saying it, right? Give careful thought to your ways. Do what Haggai challenged the people so many years ago, because at some point, and it's really early in the process if you didn't know, saying not yet eventually becomes disobedience. If you're saying not yet for any extended amount of time, it's absolute disobedience if it's not disobedience already. So stop waiting for a better time. Stop waiting for things to slow down. Stop waiting until you feel ready. Take that next step that God is asking you to take and stop saying not yet. And then some of us, and I want to explain this one, some of us need to stop resisting what God is trying to show us. When I read the prophets, I realize one of the most gracious things God does for us is to tell us the truth, or to put people in our lives who will tell us the truth. And sometimes he tells us the truth through his word, right? It's really obvious, black and white, it's right here. We know, okay, this is what God says. Sometimes it's through someone else. Sometimes it's through a circumstance. Sometimes it's through a combination of those things. And most of us, let's be honest, we resist correction. We resist conviction. We push away from it. We get defensive. We blame somebody else. We make excuses. But when we're confronted with a truth that we didn't necessarily want to hear and aren't interested in thinking about and giving careful thought to, we shouldn't dismiss it. We shouldn't just sort of pretend that we didn't hear what they said. Instead, we should do what the people of Haggai's day did. We should truly give careful thought to our ways. We should truly think about, okay, am I prioritizing the Lord? Is the Lord number one in my life? Where do I need to give careful thought of the Lord in my life? And when we do, we'll discover, just like those people in Haggai's day discovered, God isn't trying to blow us up. He's trying to wake us up. Yes, there was a drought in their day, and there was all these hardships, but God wasn't trying to just blow them up. He's trying to wake them up. Hey, guys, make me number one again. And some of us need to stop resisting what God is trying to show us and just recognize it for what it is, a rebuke, a correction of some kind, and respond to it. And then some of us, and maybe there's not many of us here this morning or watching online, some of us need to stop saying not yet to Jesus. Some of us need to stop saying not yet to Jesus. If you've never said yes to Jesus, you need to understand that, like, your greatest problem is not that your priorities are out of whack. Your greatest problem is that your sin separates you from God. Your sin has created this great gulf between you and God, and you guys are on opposite sides. And by the way, this is why the temple was so important so many years ago, because the temple was the way you were made right with God. You'd come and you'd offer sacrifices, and you'd be forgiven through the sacrificial system, the sacrificial process. The temple was where sinful people drew near to a holy God. But the temple, as special as it was for so many years, and it was absolutely special, was never the ultimate destination. In fact, the temple was a signpost. The temple pointed to something else, someone else. The temple pointed to Jesus. Because Jesus, as so many of you know, became the ultimate meeting place between God and man. Jesus became the final sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice on our behalf. And do you remember what happened when Jesus died on the cross? Remember what happened in the temple? The veil, the curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, where no one could go except once a year the high priest. This veil, this curtain tore in two. Not from the bottom up, from the top down. God ripped this curtain in half, essentially saying, there's no need for the temple anymore. Someone greater than the temple has shown up. And you don't have to go through a high priest. And you don't have to make all of these animal sacrifices. And you don't have to spill the blood of a lamb, because another lamb's blood has been spilled. Jesus spilled his blood for you. Jesus died on your behalf, and Jesus makes it possible for you to be in a relationship with God. The veil has been torn. To say it another way, if you've never heard this, Jesus has done everything necessary to make you right with God. You don't have to jump through any religious hoops. You don't have to take some special spiritual class. Jesus has done everything to make you right with God. Again, we don't need to make sacrifices anymore because Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice. We don't need a priest anymore because Jesus is our great high priest. We don't need to wonder whether we've ever done enough because Jesus has absolutely done enough. He did everything that needed to be done. And the worst thing you could say, if you never said yes to Jesus, the absolute worst thing you could say is, not yet. The worst thing you can say is, I'll get to it. The worst thing you can say is later, eventually, at some point, when things settle down, when life's less complicated. That's the worst thing you could say to Jesus. Because if Jesus has really done everything necessary to make things right between you and God, you have no business saying not yet. So if you've never said yes to Jesus, don't delay. Don't put this off. Say yes to him today.
Thank you so much for watching our sermon today. Our mission statement here at Southside, it's simple. It's to love God, love people, love the world on the journey to life change. No matter where you are on your journey, we want to be a part of it. Whether that's through baptism, joining the church, or so much more, we want to help you take that next step. So go to Southside.Church online or download our Southside.Church app. Thanks so much again for tuning in today, and we hope to see you in person at Southside soon.